Welcome to the Ransomed Heart Podcast. This is Stasi Eldredge, and it's my pleasure to be with you today and to be in the studio with Lisa Beck.
Hi.
Many of you who are acquainted with Ransomed Heart are acquainted with Lisa. She's an integral part of our women's team. She speaks at our captivating events, and I've had the honor of knowing her for more than 20 years. Do you know that it's been that long?
We've done a lot of life together.
We carpooled for kindergarten together for our, who are now 23 years old?
23 years old. Our babies, both of them.
How did that happen? We are going to be talking today, particularly to women, but men, you'll be wise to listen in, particularly, well, about a couple of things. But one of them, really, that we're both passionate about is the stages of a woman's life and the honor and the beauty of every stage you're in. And you and I are kind of in the same stage.
We are.
How would you describe it?
I would describe it as mature mentor phase.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
So not just old.
Not just old. It's that too. It's that too. I'm working past getting over my fine lines in my face and just letting that go and realizing that's not important. Still feels important some days, but yeah.
I
working
love that
past
description.
that and going, offering more than the outside.
Oh, yes. A mature mentor.
A mature mentor.
That is really good. I would say empty nest. Like in the world's, the way they categorize this, once the children have reached a certain age and they've left home, they've flown the coop. And I really hate that, though. I really hate that term, empty nest, because it really focuses on
the empty.
Yes.
Yes.
And
it's so much more.
It's so much more. So, yeah, let's talk about that. So your children are older.
Yeah, I have a daughter who is 27 and married. Is that right? Is Sam 27?
Yeah, 27.
Okay. 27, she's married and she lives in LA. So she is definitely out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
And then I have a son who is 23 and he is currently back in the house. So our empty nest has been refeathered or populated for now, not only by him, by a dog as well that he brought back into our home. So that has its own look too. But
let's talk about that, because that's really normal. That's really common, particularly in the age that we're living in. There's like a majority of what are fondly called millennials in that in-between stage need to move back home for a season.
Yes.
So what does it look like? Because it's hard. What does it look like? Because you're still his mother. He's still his son, your son, but he's grown up. And so parenting him looks a lot different than it did as a child, as an elementary school student, as a teenager. What are, okay, I just have a story. When my children were young,
yes,
I have a friend whose children were late teens, early 20s. And she told me, these are, to me, your years that you're living in right now are the physically exhausting ones. Later, it becomes emotionally exhausting.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, I didn't really know what she meant. And I also felt a wee bit diminished because, baby, those were emotionally exhausting years too.
Yes,
I mean,
they were.
I was taken to the mat, really. And really invited to press into God as my strength, as my everything, and which was a fruit. But do you know what she meant?
I do, but I would like to really the emotional part of it. It probably comes with any relationship.
Right.
No matter what the season, there's an emotional element to it that really. So I want to validate that's
Yes.
really true. But the what was hard for me during those preschool years it was how hard and how exhausting it was. And there was very little intellect involved. It's just kind of
Yes.
making it through the day and you're exhausted, but you're coming off of a lot of intellectual energy during that season of your life. So you want to offer that, and they just don't care. They just want you to feed them and make their lives comfortable. So in reverse of that, now having an adult child and to be able to offer on an emotional, intellectual level, I think is pretty rewarding, but it's challenging because you've spent so much time ordering their lives and being in charge and in control and making decisions for them to keep them safe and to offer them the best you have.
Yes.
But now they have their own ideas. Not that 2-year-olds don't, because they
Right.
absolutely do. But you're still pretty sure you know better than they do.
Yes.
And now you're dealing with a 22 or 23-year-old, and it looks really different.
I really want to go into that because it's a huge shift. It's even
a huge shift.
The shift began for us. Sam was the first one to go to college, and he came home Thanksgiving. And that one, it was a little different, but the bigger one was Christmas when it was longer because he had become accustomed to doing what he wanted. He didn't have to tell us. He didn't ask our permission if he was going to go out or do something or something, and comes back home, and the rules have definitely shifted. He's not a high school student anymore, but he's also underneath our roof.
Right.
And so negotiating and navigating that, and then that just increases as they are adults.
Right. And trying to make adjustments. So I think for us, the key word was adjustment, making adjustments. So like how you move them out of their crib into a toddler bed, into a bigger bed, and now whatever they'll fit into at this point. You have to kind of look at that emotionally and relationally as well, is they have a capacity for more. And the way to exercise that or to strengthen that is for you to invite them into more, release them into more. And that's really hard because you've always been in the same role of covering, protecting, ruling, controlling, teaching. And that's not, it's not applicable in the same way anymore. So you'll have to adjust for that. And what it looked like for us, it's gradual, like everything
That's good.
is. Yes. Yes, there was not a big episode blow up that happened, although there were a lot of things that did happen, and you would end up in bed that night talking, Brad and I talking like, whoa, what just happened there? And how do we deal with this? But I think that it happened gradually because as they progress through high school, they might get a job or they might have friends or they get that driver's license, so they're easing out into responsibilities that you hope to launch them into. You're wishing for that, but letting go and letting them make mistakes that won't cost them like it would if they were 40.
Oh, but isn't that one of the hard things?
That's so hard. No, I'm not saying this is easy or pretty or but you let them make certain mistakes where the consequences are minor now in comparison to what they would be if they were a parent or a spouse or living on their own.
Okay, I'm going to ask you for an example of that because that's part of the difficulty is as your children get older, the ramifications of their mistakes. If you make a mistake and you are riding your tricycle and you crash, versus the ramifications of if you're driving in a car and you crash, it's exponentially larger. And yet, and this is one of the things that I'm not thrilled about, but it's true, is that we learn from our mistakes. And we can't spare our children from all of the suffering that we would love to.
Right.
Because of how God uses that to shape them and teach them and draw them to himself.
And that's how we learn. That
Right.
is how we would learn.
Yes.
And so protecting them from that, I so hoped to be able to say, okay, I really messed up in this area, so let's not have you do it too.
Right.
And I do believe that you can semi-vaccinate them. You can give them a little dose without the full-blown illness, but you can't totally protect them from everything. So an example would be when Bree wrecked our van. And it was an accident. Kids have accidents when they drive, and she wrecked it. So the consequence to that, not that she did it intentionally or that we wanted to punish her, but as an adult, what do you have to do when you have a wrecked, disabled vehicle? What do you do with it? And so we coached her through it. We were supportive of her, but can you find out, are the tires sellable?
Like wrecked, like totaled?
Oh, yeah, like totaled.
Oh, okay.
Like totaled. And how do we have this hauled away? Is it fixable? So having her sit down with a laptop and go through different car places, that might help her, to talk her through that. It was a good thing for her to know, I can manage this. This is what happens when something happens, there's a next step. When something happens, you can't always bail me out. Now, no one was hurt, and it was her fault. She did have to go to court. So we went to court with her, and we split the fine with her. She was not in a financial position to really pay the whole fine, so we split that with her. All of that, it was hard, it was traumatic, but it gave her a skill set out of a bad situation that I think was helpful to her.
That is so good. That is so
It seemed
good.
really mean at the time,
I
because
bet
you
it
just
did.
want to make it go away. You just want to have the car hauled away and don't even think about it. But it was a hard situation.
And a training situation.
A training situation, exactly. Something to put in her tool belt, something to build skills and confidence. And
how old was she?
16.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah. And that's young.
It is young.
That is young. But of course, it's old enough to have a driver's license.
Yeah.
And no, it's not 6. And so had she wrecked a bicycle or something, you pick them up, you dust them off, you bandage their wounds, you buy a new bike, you do what you have to do. But if they're old enough to ride or drive a vehicle, then there's responsibilities that go with it that's more age appropriate.
Yeah.
And I would think homework would be a similar thing. Nobody wants their kids to fail a paper or to not turn a homework assignment in on time. But we chose that option coupled with time management rather than constantly saying, do you have that done? Let me check that for you, unless they invited it. If they invited it, we said yes. But I would rather them mess up a homework assignment in high school.
Right.
Than not have their mortgage payment in when they're 40.
Right. And have them feel the weight and the ramification of their choices with more simple things. That's what you meant by saying feeling the ramifications of their choices as they're younger versus when they're 40.
Yes.
That's so good. So now we're 10 years later.
We are.
And John and I often say, where is the book about parenting adult children? And
truly.
And we talk about, that's the book we need to write, but that's the book we cannot write because there are stories all about our adult children. And I mean, it's one thing to share stories that are young and, this and that. But
it's called pen names.
Yeah. I have a friend who had a daughter named, I think they might see through that. Nonetheless, we're learning and I'm learning from other people and I'm learning from you. And I actually remember Lori McConnell telling me that as a parent of younger children, you have a right to their life, and they're living in your home. You have a right to
and
ask.
a responsibility.
Absolutely. But when they're older, you don't have that anymore. And you don't get to just bust through those doors. Rather, you need to be invited in.
Right.
The other thing I'm learning is that parenting adult children means biting my tongue a lot.
So much.
Have you found that to be true?
Well, even from their wedding choices.
Oh, yes.
You mean what? You're not going to have a program and tell who the bridesmaids are?
Okay. Yeah, I kind of freaked out with the program thing for mine.
and food, just when they start making those choices that seem big and they impact you or they matter to you, but they don't really matter,
Yes.
It's hard, but they're little practice steps towards their adulthood. And but it's for us, when Chris moved home after he graduated from college, he waited a couple months after graduation, and then he moved back just last summer. And we were unsure of how to do this because the book is not out.
Right.
Yes. So we just sat him down and said, here's where we are. We believe we have things to offer you, that just because you're X amount of years old doesn't mean our parenting is over. But we realize that you have your own ideas and thoughts and ways you want to do things. So we are going to, unless you are in danger of life or limb, we are going to hold back and wait to be invited into. So your job search, you go for it. If you would like help, if you would like input, if you would like discussion, we're all over it. But we don't want to hound you. We don't want to badger you, lecture you. Well, we do want to, but we're going to not to. And how are you feeling about that? What do you think about that? And of course, he loved it because he knows so much right now.
I knew everything.
They know everything. Didn't we all when we were 20-something? And but it has actually worked. I think what it did is it tore down a wall or a barrier that he might have had in resisting and understanding that, I can ask if I want it, if I want input, but I don't have to. I don't have to dodge you. I don't have to avoid you
a little right now.
Because
I think that's so wise. But did you get to say anything? I mean, did you get to occasionally ask how's it going, or have you considered things like that?
That's been the key for us, is to reframe the questions. So the questions don't come in, what did you do today? Where did you apply?
Oh, right.
Are you going to wear that to the interview? That the sort of thing. To tell me about, or what are you thinking? How are you feeling? We ask not with imposing our ideas.
It's respectful.
It's respectful. There you go. So trying to look at them like an adult who has something to say and offer back, rather than trying to impose our will upon him by the questions we're asking. And I think you should have applied to 3 more places today, not just 5, or whatever. Let me see your cover letter. But would you like me to look at your cover letter and see what it looks like, or give you some ideas? Or I had something similar happen one time. You want to hear how that played out? And so an offering or an invitation rather than an imposing on him or a controlling kind of attitude towards him. And it's actually required me to lean into God, to lean into believing that Jesus has a place for him.
Yes.
And that he has built him and has a story for him that's his own, aside from what I might want, how I might want it to play out or look like. I want it to be safe and scheduled and have good benefits and health care and the whole thing. And it might look different than that. And having to trust Jesus, and that has been really good
Yes.
for me and really good for the relationship. Chris is relaxed into knowing that we believe that, and it helps him believe it.
Oh, yes. Remember the sentence that mothering is a prayerful art?
Mm-mm.
It's so true. And when we began, we were talking about when they're young children, we pressed into God. Like
Yes.
we needed, and man, I needed him. And it's the same now, pressing into God and being able to release them, to grow into actually trusting him with our children is so vital. And we have a trustworthy God who loves them more than we do. But I think for me, part of the challenge is that I see them as I have 3 sons. They're all 3 married. But for my sons, I see them as the young men that they are. I see them.
Mm-hmm.
But I also see them as the 4-year-old, as the 6-year-old, as the 8-year-old. And I can slip in if I'm not paying attention or if I'm feeling fearful, I can really slip into being the mother of an 8-year-old. It does not go well.
No, nor does anything when we operate out of fear. And I think for me, that's the key. It's a fear thing. It's not even how it looks. It's what I'm afraid you're stepping into or how it's going to play out. That's not good.
That's so good. That's true. And the thing that helps me, that catches me, is that I do want relationship with them.
Mm-hmm.
So it does make me keep my mouth shut. Like, I have a friend was very concerned about the husband that their daughter was choosing.
Mm-hmm.
And then they saw the difficulty in the relationship. And sometimes when it was rough, their temptation was to just end it or come down really hard rather than spirit-led sensitivity.
Mm-hmm.
But they chose wisdom. They chose love. Because they wanted to keep the conversation open. And if things did go south, they wanted to remain a safe place for for their daughter to come back to. And that was a challenge for them.
Yes.
It bore great fruit. And it doesn't mean you don't say anything.
Right.
I mean, we protect our children. Something's going on and we still speak. But it does mean more often than not being invited in and being mindful that they are adults, that their choices are different than ours. And that's hard when they make them. One of the ways that it's hard sometimes to see our children making choices that we might not want them to make or failing, even this was all of their lives. It's so easy to take them as a reflection on my life, on our lives. So if they're doing well, I must be a pretty good parent. I'm doing this right. And that's a dangerous thing to fall into because when they're not doing well and choices that they're making, are they all my fault? Some of them may be. But I think it's really important. We've said this before. I've said it about my husband. He's not the report card on my life. He's not.
Mm-hmm.
And our children, they're not the report card on our life. And somehow that helps me, remembering that helps me to release them and not go to control. You have to look like this. You got to dress. Really? You want to have a mohawk at the wedding? Not, speaking from hypothetically.
Yes, that never happened.
It's like, bless you. You bet. Be you.
Be you. Probably an understanding or eyes and a heart for the fact that they do have their own story and that it's different from yours. And of course, you would want that. You would want that.
Yes.
And it's really easy to say until they start doing it and you're thinking, what do you mean you're going to go that route? But then seeing God show up in that and seeing the beauty of their own story unfold in ways that you could not manufacture or conjure or control is powerful and beautiful. And it's their story with their God, with with Jesus. It's not yours to control.
That's so good. So that, and is there anything else, Lise, that you would say to a parent that's listening right now whose child is making bad decisions and they are deeply concerned about? Anything you want to remind them of?
That he does have a plan for them, that his eyes are not off of that child, that it's not up to you. You're not their savior, that they need a savior. They need a savior. They need an encounter with Jesus that will impact and change, rescue and save their lives.
We pray for our children. We're on our knees. We raise them on our knees, and that doesn't stop. We are their mother or their father all of our lives, and no one loves them more than our God in heaven. There's power in prayer, and the power of prayer for a parent, I don't think you can measure that. This has been a conversation with Lisa about parenting and a little stirring the pot of what it's like parenting adult children. I think we could go for about 2 hours.
Maybe a book.
Maybe, yeah. Lisa, you write that, and with your hypothetical stories. So thank you for joining us. This is the Ransomed Heart podcast, and have a great day.